Howdy folks, I'm JC from OneShotAdventures.com, and saddle up because today I'm going to give you a walkthrough of the Old West horror adventure, St. Cecilia's Blasphemous Bordello. St. Cecilia's Blasphemous Bordello is a free Old West role-playing adventure designed for 3 to 5 players. It can probably be completed in 1 or 2 sessions. It blends investigation, role-playing, and gunslinging action fairly equally. There are versions available for GURPS and Call of Cthulhu down darker trails, but it's pretty easy to port to other game systems. It also includes pre-generated characters and handouts so GMs can get this adventure up and running without a ton of extra prep work. There are spoilers coming around the bend, so if you're thinking about playing this adventure, why don't you skedaddle and tell your game master to check this video out instead. The year is 1883 and the railroad just came to the small town of Tunis, New Mexico territory. The sheriff has a problem. You see, actually, I'll just let the sheriff explain the problem himself.
Welcome to Tunis, friends. I can tell you're looking around wondering if you just found the smallest crowbait town in all New Mexico territory. And I'd agree with you. But this little town's got what you need. Let's see, there's a fancy new saloon called the Bangtail, a new pastor at the church, and old Elijah Bread is as cranky as ever at the general store. Oh, but the bank did close. It got robbed before I was sheriff here. The banker said he'd be back to reopen, but no one's seen him in a year. Listen, I gotta get on this train and head to my sister's big old wedding. I hate to surprise you like this, but I need you to handle something while I'm gone. Turns out there were 2 murders at the bordello last night. Sorry, I meant the orphanage. I still call it the bordello because that's what it was a few weeks ago. Townsfolk here sure weren't happy when some nuns bought their famous money-making bordello. If you ask me, I suspect the murder's nothing more than a blow-up between 2 drifters, but can you head over there and do a quick investigation? The nuns are all balled up because they have some more orphans coming soon. I am positive you folks are capable of handling the fuss. I'd take care of it myself, but if I'm late for my sister's wedding, I'll be the next murder victim here in Tunis. Anyway, I truly appreciate your help. Good luck.
That's the setup. The PCs are new to town and asked to check out a double murder that just happened at the orphanage, which a few weeks ago used to be the most famous bordello in all New Mexico territory. When the PCs get to the orphanage, they discover that 2 drifters have been horribly killed. Their heads have been gruesomely yanked right off their bodies. There's no sign of the killer or of the men's heads. The nuns who work at the orphanage have no explanation. They didn't hear anything during the night. Searching the men's bodies, the PCs find a crumpled receipt for a doll and a pig candle. Talking to the orphanage's only orphan is a little unsettling. This little girl claims that in the middle of the night, her door cracked open and she saw a faceless man. He walked into her room, he picked up her fallen doll, gave it back to her, and then left. So now the players have to go out into the town of Tunis and investigate what might have happened that night. So the next part of the adventure has them exploring the town and talking to and role-playing with the town's various influential residents. The player's main lead at this point will be that receipt that they found for the candle and for the doll. And this will lead them to the general store, where its owner, a grumpy old man named Elijah Bread, has been receiving those candles and delivering them to other people in town every now and then, including the town's resident widow, Harriet Gardner, but we'll come back to her. But the more the players talk to people in town, the more they'll keep hearing unsettling stories about the maker of these candles, a sinister fellow named the Candleman who occasionally visits town, and they're going to start wondering if he's involved somehow in the murders that they just witnessed in the orphanage. But there's a problem, because nobody knows where the Candleman actually lives. He's definitely not in town, and the Old West in New Mexico territory was a huge, vast place, so it's not like the players can just leave town and hope that they run across him. However, a clever fellow in town, a man named Ephraim Kingsley, says that he can track down the Candleman. Ephraim's a spy. He's a double agent. He works for both Mexico as well as for the Pinkertons, and he's confident he can track anybody down through his network of contacts. So he's willing to help the PCs for a price. Ephraim Kingsley's price is not that simple. In a few hours, the afternoon train is going to come into town, and it's carrying a corrupt Mexican mine owner, Vicente Guzman, who is heading north to do a deal to buy some territory in the United States to open up some new mines. Ephraim Kingsley does not want this deal to get done. This mine owner, Guzman, is corrupt. He kidnaps his own people to work in his mines, and he has enough money to start a war with the United States. So nobody wants this guy to actually pull off this deal. This part of the adventure is fairly open-ended and really encourages player creativity. When the train stopped, the PCs have about 20 minutes to convince Guzman from doing his deal. Bloodthirsty players might just shoot him dead, but I've found that players really like to take more creative and fun routes to getting this job done. I've run this adventure twice, and the first time the group of players decided to steal Vicente Guzman's money. So they snuck into the train and they smuggled out his case of silver so that when he got up north, he'd be broke and was unable to do the deal. It was kind of a clever solution to the problem. Second time I ran it, the players got a little bit confused because they didn't realize which guy was Vicente Guzman, and they ended up intimidating like his henchmen while the train left the station with the real guy on it, and so they had to grab a bunch of horses and race to catch up to the train, and they ended up brawling with Guzman and tossing him out of the train. It was a totally botched solution, but it actually worked out really fun at the end and felt very old westy to have them chasing after a train. It was kind of cool. No matter how your players decide to resolve this, once Guzman is stopped, Ephraim Kingsley will use his network to find the home of the Candleman. The Candleman lives in a small pig farm in a place called Rattlesnake Box, located about 20 miles from town. When the players ride out to the canyon, they'll be shocked to see that the Candleman is running a horrific and monstrous operation. He seems to be feeding his pigs human flesh, which he then turns into these black tallow candles. Worse, his farm is worked by the swine folk, these degenerate, half-man, half-porcine henchmen. Now, as a game master, you should dial up or down the particular horror of the Candleman's operation, depending on your players' tastes. I like to lean into the Lovecraftian element of this, and I made the swine folk these really disgusting, almost alien creatures that as soon as the players witnessed what they were doing, I called for lots of sanity or fright checks or whatever, because I really wanted them to be unsettling and kind of set up the Candleman as this really nasty and strange fellow who could command these weird creatures. Even though the Candleman is the key villain of this adventure, he's not especially dangerous. The swinefolk are, but he's happy to talk to the PCs. He's curious if they've come to buy some more of his special candles. Eventually, the PCs will discover that it was the widow, Harriet Gardner, that was planning on buying the candles and using their dark powers to destroy the orphanage. It turns out her husband was murdered there years ago when it was a bordello, and she was so embarrassed and angry, she just wanted the place burned down and destroyed utterly. But worse, the players will also discover that the dark entity that was summoned by the candle, the innominate man, the guy who yanked the heads off those two drifters back in the orphanage, will be back every single night until he's claimed 9 heads for his dark masters. At this point, the Candleman's probably dead. The players are not going to let this guy live very long, but they'll discover through his books that the innominate man is vulnerable to silver and that he can be defeated. With a trainload of new orphans about to arrive into town, the PCs now have to race back to Tunis and stop the innominate man before he reappears to claim some more innocent victims. I gave game masters a lot of options to tune the difficulty of this final encounter. I found that when you have a single villain, especially in a modern adventure with guns, no matter how strong you want to make this villain, he's probably just going to get gunned down by trigger-happy players. And that's not a great finale to an adventure. So you'll find lots of options here for adding complications to the end of the adventure to make life a little bit more difficult for the players. For example, the swine folk might track the PCs back to town. So just as the players are planning to lay an ambush for the innominate man, they hear screams from across town as the swine folk are coming in, and now they'll have to deal with both issues at the same time. Or the outlaw brother of one of the original men that was killed in the orphanage. I didn't really talk about him, but it's set up that one of those men had a brother that was infamous. Like, he might show up now to seek his revenge, and he doesn't care about the town or the Innominate Man. He thinks that the players somehow were involved in his brother's murder, and now the players have to deal with him while they're dealing with the Innominate Man. When I ran this adventure, I wanted to lean into the supernatural weirdness of the whole thing, so I gave the Innominate Man the power to bring back his past victims as these sort of headless zombies. So just as my players thought that they were about to take down the Innominate Man, suddenly these zombies come crashing through the orphanage walls and wrestling them and throwing them out windows, and it just really added to the chaos and excitement to the ending. But Game Masters, really you should just tune this for your own group, and there's lots of options to really tweak it to make it a final encounter that your players will enjoy. So with a little luck, the Game Master can smoothly bring this adventure into the train station with the PCs saving an orphanage and defeating a horror from the netherworld. Yippee-ki-yay! As the designer of this adventure, I was really trying to pull off several things. You can let me know how I did in the comments below. But the first thing I was trying to do was really blend a lot of different adventure styles together. I tried to equally incorporate investigation, role-playing, and Old West action into one adventure. I think there's some interesting NPCs and town histories the players can piece together if they're into that, but there's also gunfights with swine folks for the players who just want to shoot things and have itchy trigger fingers. Next, I wanted the adventure to focus on a mysterious and creepy villain, not the type of big bad that can single-handedly take on the PCs in a hand-to-hand fight like you might find in a fantasy adventure. I feel like for an Old West adventure, one of the themes is that life is cheap, and it feels wrong to have villains that are combat monsters. So I designed the adventure so the players keep hearing about the Candleman. They're reminded about his presence again and again, but they don't actually meet him until the very end of the adventure. I think this setup works really well to create the kind of tension you want in a final encounter. I think this worked really well in real life when I ran this adventure because each time the players were pretty terrified of the Candleman when they finally met him, and they approached this final encounter with him really cautiously, which gave the adventure a nice tense feeling that I wanted from something set in the Old West. Finally, and this may not be a big deal to some of you, but I wanted to include even more virtual tabletop assets for you game masters running games online. I continue to hear from everybody that so many game masters are stuck at home still and still want to run games for their friends, so this adventure includes not only pre-generated characters, but also digital handouts, battle maps, and for you GURPS players, all the adventure's characters are done in GCA format, so you can easily import them into your favorite VTT tool. If this is helpful to you, let me know in the comments below. Well, that's the summary of St. Cecilia's Blasphemous Bordello. If you're hankering to take a trip to the old haunted West, take a look. You can download this adventure for free at oneshotadventures.com. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, and I'll see you soon, partner.